This is the Leo Clamaco podcast.
Do you think you did that because you really wanted to kill yourself or you wanted the attention?
There were different versions of it. So there was one time when I wanted the attention, but many of the times I was in solitude. Many of the times I didn't feel like there was any hope. There was one time where it was like I was crying out for help. I was crying out for attention.
Right.
I tried 4 times. Right?
Wow.
From hanging myself and the beam broke to putting a gun to my head, fully loaded, pulled the trigger, didn't go off, to taking a full bottle of Ambien.
Was not meant to be.
No, it wasn't meant to be.
No.
And then
God got plans for you, bro.
Yeah. It was something else. It was something else. So, and I'm grateful for all of it because of where I am now. But if I could do it all over again, I wouldn't do it that way, right? But I know that I had to get to where I'm at now.
Right.
If that makes any sense. So,
right.
But my feeling in my hands came back, right? My right leg was completely healed.
Wow.
The back pain was gone. Like now I don't have that issue. But I used to have to go to the clinic and like do PT for like months at a time in order to get myself back walking again because I would just not be able to walk.
It's crazy how everything that you were holding on to was causing you this pain.
100%.
And the moment you let go, no more pain.
No more pain. And it all is very much so associated where I had trauma in my body. So like, okay, well, because certain things happen in the sexual abuse lane, of course it happens in my lower back.
For sure.
Right? Because I didn't feel grounded and safe, of course my legs were messed up. Right? Because I was over giving all the time, of course, the right hand, I didn't feel anything anymore. And when I started to balance those things back out, everything started to balance out energetically in my body.
Wow.
Yeah. And then that led into the agency started. So at that whole thing, after that happened, the next day I start getting phone calls where people are just putting money into my bank account, like bananas, like 7 figures. And I remember I showed Sophia, and it was like all of a sudden, like you hit the lottery energetically, and then all of a sudden everything comes in. And then I didn't know what to do with that.
So this was all through breath work?
This was through meditation, awareness, and just energy, like energy healing, I would call it that.
Right.
And even at the retreat that we were at, you know, there were 2,000 people at this thing. And I remember we signed up for like a raffle where you could get another one. And odds of winning that are pretty limited.
Yeah.
And I ended up winning it, which was, and I stood up and he's like, and then Joe was like, oh, he called me out, Big Sean, I saw you on the beach. I saw your breakthrough. I just want you to know. Wow. And I was like, oh. And so then, of course, I became a guru junkie and started following Dr. Joe for a couple of years after that. And it opened my mind up to a lot of different teachings and things that he would see. But then that just opened my mind up to go deeper. Then I went on this like plant medicine fiasco for a year. And then
just did mine 3 weeks ago.
Did you really? How was it?
It's incredible.
Yeah. What'd you do?
I did combo.
Okay.
And then I did ayahuasca.
Nice.
It was
that was the first one?
First time ever.
Amazing.
It's life changing for me.
It is very life changing.
Yeah, it really was.
Yeah.
She punched me right in the face. She really did.
Yeah. And I mean, integration after that is everything because that is something I did not do. I just was like on the kick, and then it took me about 9 months to integrate.
Really?
And putting a bunch of people through a lot of hell, putting my wife now through a lot of hell. But when we came back together, I ended up doing the Hoffman process. And I would say after that and after our first steps of healing is when this whole other transformation started to happen. So the transformation is always happening.
For sure.
But the person that you see now on social, or the things that I talk about now didn't come into me. It was like all of this learning curriculum, and then you get thrown out there. And it was at the top of last year, I posted my first social media video, and it did horribly, right? And I'm like, all right. And I remember Sophia, she was just like, you don't know what you're talking about. Because at the time I really didn't.
Right.
You know, I was practicing. I was figuring it out.
Right. You were trying.
But I kept going. And then it was just like there was an internal knowing and stuff started to drop in. And this different level of consciousness started to come in. And I started writing like crazy and reading like crazy and like just learning different aspects of what I considered everything I could possibly know. And now it's integrated itself into just a different aspect of wisdom that I feel that it's my responsibility to give to the world. And I know that whoever listens to it, if I change one, you change everybody. So that's, you know, but it starts with the change of myself.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you feel, it almost sounds like you were clogged?
Yeah.
And then you unclogged yourself and then this download just started pouring into you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like the frequency couldn't connect before because you were so
Yeah, I was all over the place, and I was seeking. You know, there's seeking, there's finding, and there's knowing. That's
Right.
what I call it. So you seek, and then you find, and then when you find, sometimes your ego takes over, and then when you know, you're really still. And so I was constantly seeking. Then when I found this Dr. Joe thing, I found community that was affirming me. I found plant medicine that I would get these like crazy ass downloads inside of this plant medicine. But in the finding, my ego took over. And then I would sit at this hierarchy on this perch and then tell everybody a thing. And that's how cults start. Right? Because you could sit up there in your ego because you know a lot. You get the download.
Right.
But you become
What a great point.
spiritual asshole. You become just a dick, right? And that was the hardest part because you can get affirmed by so many people
Right.
who tell you you're doing a good job. And
That get to your head.
yeah, it gets to your head. It gets to your head. And then balancing it out is saying, having somebody in your life, you know, which Sophia very much was that for me, is saying, hey, yeah, that's good. You know that, but how are you integrating it? How does it mean anything? And that's that masculine and feminine coming together.
Right.
When you have somebody that yin yangs you.
It's beautiful.
That's why relationships are so important.
For sure.
You know? And it doesn't have to be, it's not a, you know, hetero, homo, you know, sexual relationship, romantic thing,
Right.
anything like that. It's just another person that you're accountable to that can look at you and call your bullshit.
Right. Accountability.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was a big opening for me that I didn't like at first because you want to be in your ego. You want to be right. But
Right.
then once I realized that there is no right or wrong, there just is, you get into that knowing.
Just something else you're holding on to,
Exactly.
wanting to be right.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Let's go back to your business, to your partnership for 1 second, because that was really, we just waved right over
Yeah,
that
we did
one.
a whole bunch. Yeah, we did a fast move.
What business were you building that made 20 mil?
Yeah.
And was he ever caught?
Never caught. It was a
Wow.
medical staffing business. And so my first job out of school was medical staffing, got in there. Once again, wanted to see everybody to affirm me. So
Right.
I outworked everybody. I pulled the Kobe Bryant and just worked my ass off. You know, people were making 100 calls a day. I'd make 300.
Wow.
And then I grew to VP when I was like 24 years old in this like 1,000-person company. And
Overachiever.
yeah, overachiever for sure.
Yeah.
And then my, you know, my business partner, he had an IT staffing company. He's like, oh, you should join me. I brought my clients, got sued really badly because I took my clients. It rectified itself and then it grew really quickly. So no, he never got caught.
That's crazy.
Wasn't for him to get caught. You know, everybody has their own prison they live in.
Yeah,
I needed mine to release myself from, you know, at the time, the family that I was in because it wasn't healthy for me.
Did he use you? Did he like strategically plan this to put the blame on you, do you think?
I don't think so.
No?
No, I think he saw an opportunity
And took
he
it.
took it. Yeah. Yeah. And it was at the time banking was slow. There was a, you know, thing you could do with factoring. And if you just like double factor invoices, go from one to another, you know, and things don't move quickly, this happens.
Right.
And I ended up trying to save people because of it and did a bunch of crap on the dark web to, I can go deeper in the story if you want, but essentially the nuances of the story are he ended up double factoring money.
Wow.
Bank comes in and says you owe us money. He disappears, goes to another country. I'm left with the tab. I asked the hospital, a couple hospitals we're working with if we could advance bill them. One of the hospitals took care of it. You know, it was a tune of $600,000 that we just had to make up because like
Wow.
the total overall thing was like $6 million. We paid off 5.4 with the money that we had. We had $600,000 left, and that $600,000 because he didn't have capital expenditure approval to do things, ended up kind of like getting him stuck. And so I ended up after he sent me the money, he got in trouble because he didn't have the approval to send the money a year later.
Wow.
After getting audited at the hospital. I jump in, go to the dark web, find a way to send emails between him and his boss for approvals, stick them in his, yeah, I know, right? Stick them in his inbox, say, hey, dude, check this out. He ends up getting off. Another year goes by, the hospital gets audited. They see this IP breach. They come to my house. And basically that's where the whole thing started. And I'd never gotten detention or in trouble or anything like that. And I was like, oh, the federal agents come in. I tell them like, oh yeah, here's what happened. They check my computer like, oh, you're right. They let me go at the time. And I should have watched more TV. Shut my mouth. But I was just, you know, I was scared at the time. And
What made you think of that to go to the dark web?
because I was just looking up like how can I get this fixed inside of their system? So of course hacking, of course this.
Right.
Never done any of those things. And that's what ended up me sending these like dumbass emails.
Got it. So that's what got you locked up.
That's what got me locked up. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. And they were like, oh, you have options. If you fight us, you already told us everything. You'll go to prison for 9 years. If you plea out, you get this. You know, we won't deal with your family because my dad was in the company, my sister was in the company.
Wow.
You know, or you can like help us hunt this guy down. I'm like, I don't even know what that means, right? So, you know, that's not a thing. So I just plead out.
Become an agent and go to different countries and hunt this guy down.
Yeah. So I just took the deal, and you know, I'd say it's one of the best things that happened to me because it got me out of a really tough family structure that I was in.
It's a reset, right?
Yeah, it was a reset. Yeah. Because I was married at the time. It wasn't healthy. And it got me out of that. And I was such a people pleaser, I never would have left on my own. So it was like my higher self, you know, called me into this experience.
Right.
I never would have been able to look at, because I mean, I grew up in a very white community, you know, probably tell by my voice, but I
love how real you are.
Yeah. You know, I grew up, my dad would be like, oh, you don't want to be around this type of person. So, you know, these things would happen, you know, and I would go to the hood or do something like that where my grandmother was at, and I would just like stay afraid. And then you go in there, you're like, hey, like there's black TV room, Mexican TV room, white TV room. Yeah. Go into the black TV room. I go in there, they call me white boy. And I'd be like, okay, and I'm too small and I'm this and that. So then you have to learn how to navigate that, and you got nowhere to go. It's not like you can just not come back. Right. You know, you're not going to just stay in your bunk all day.
You are who you are.
Yeah. And so eventually, you know, you don't adapt because I never changed myself, but you just learn to find commonalities with everybody. And if you can do that in there, you can do that anywhere. Yeah.